we're going to be discussing dusting gear, all on this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast.
Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez, here every day discussing all things pests. Hey, welcome to the latest edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. We're going to be discussing dusting gears. Not gears that you put dust in. It's just gear that you use to dust. So yeah, we're going to be discussing that. But before we get into that, I want to discuss our group. We have a listeners group, in case you didn't know it. There's a listeners group. Go ahead and join, because there we can comment. You guys can comment on the podcast that we put out. Help complete the podcast because there's stuff I missed. Help other people that are going to be listening to it, and the notes and all that, so they can, follow up with that and learn more. So we really want to help people learn. We want to make this the world's free pest control training podcast. Okay, so this is what we're focused on. Getting you the best training for free all over the world. So that's what we're going to focus on, and that's what we're going to achieve. And also join us the website. We're getting ready. I'm going to get ready to redo that website. We just did that website just to be able to publish the content. Nothing really impressive about it. It's actually pretty horrid. But I'm going to be doing the podcast. It's been 2 years. This was a test, and I think I passed. So 2 years of doing this continuously. We've been very successful at doing this, and we're getting great feedback, and we're getting a lot of people excited about what we're doing, where we're going. So Jeff McGovern is going to be talking about gear for dusting. And I had a great time on Saturday. He was actually here in Miami, which is very rare because nobody comes down to Miami. Miami is like the armpit of America when it comes to coming down for pest control. Everything is done in northern Florida. But he was down in Sunrise. Edinger's has this pest control school, and he was doing training, and I was on my way to Orlando to go to Expo because I was just going to meet with a bunch of vendors and people over there, and I went ahead and had a deviation and went in and met him and spent about an hour. So he was very gracious to spend about an hour with me. So the pest coach and the pest geek got together, and but he had to go back in and do some more training. So I had to get to Orlando. So by the time I get to Orlando, because I started out late that morning, I had to get my tech ready. I had to get a couple of things ready, and I was planning on leaving really early, being there probably till noon, 3:00, and then head back. Well, by the time I got there, the exhibit hall was already broken down by 3. It was supposed to be open till 3. It was already broken down and gone by 3:00. So didn't get to meet any, but I got an 8-hour drive, which I needed, for myself, for my sanity. And I was able to do a lot of thinking by myself with no interruptions, nobody calling, nobody wanting anything from me, which is rare, that I get 8 hours to myself in a year, much less in one day. So the drive wasn't necessarily bad. But without a further ado, man, let's get Jeff on here.
Hello, Pest Geek Podcast listeners. This is Jeff McGovern, the Pest Coach. Let's kick around the idea of dusting. And I don't mean the type of dusting you do when you're cleaning up around the house, flicking a little bit of dust off the statuettes and the things that you're displaying. I'm talking about dusting with regards to what we do professionally. The application of dry materials in order to get control of pest issues, putting out dust. Now, over the years, there have been a lot of different types of pieces of equipment for that. And when I started, the piece of equipment that I was handed was a Getz duster, a small bellows-type piece of equipment, and you pulled the cork on the end of it, you put the product inside, and I added a marble or a small stone, filling up the device about 1/3 of the way, and then I would shake it. I'd have the injection tube at the top, and I'd simply squeeze and put out a puff of material. Now, that was the proper way to use a Getz duster. You fill it up about 1/3 of the way, you put in something to break up the material inside, and then you would shake it, and you put out the dust off the headspace on the top of the unit. That served me really well for a long time, but over the years, we were putting out more dust. We were told we're going to have to dust an attic or a crawl space or something like that, and we got into pump-style dusters, and holy cow, did they put out dust. I mean, you'd push that into a space, puff the handle, and you'd cover it. But you know, too much dust is definitely a bad thing. And when I started doing carpenter ant work in the Midwest in the late 1970s, early 80s, we started looking at more precise placement of product to intercept the insect, and they wouldn't know we had done anything and therefore get a lethal dose of the material. And honestly, that same light dusting idea works for everything. Too much dust is a bad thing. Now, if you've got that small hand duster and you puff it into a crack, there's that little voice in the back of your head that says, keep putting in dust. Don't do that. One simple puff of material into a zone is normally enough. Now, the problem is you may be trying to fill a void area. If you're doing that and you keep puffing, you may not really be getting product where you need to put it. You have to have direct airflow. Now, the first type of dusters we had for that simply pressurized a larger cylinder, and we would put the nozzle into the space and squeeze and inject a tremendous amount of product. But we weren't getting the flow necessary to put out the dust we needed to get control. We were actually blocking the spaces off, and the insect couldn't get to the product or couldn't get into the spaces properly, couldn't access their normal travel patterns. Therefore, we were not going to get the control we should have, even though in our minds we said, wait a minute, we put out dust. So you have to understand how to put the product out. Now, in today's world, we have very good dusting equipment. The small Getz-style dusters are still being made. I think the most common version that people see is the one that's distributed through Eaton's. They have a pretty good little bellows-type duster, and it does the job in a small space. It does it very well. But you have to remember, keep the nozzle at the top. Don't turn it over. That's tempting, but it's way too much product. Aerofog also has a very nice little puffer duster that puts out minute amounts of material, and that's exactly what you want to be able to puff into small areas. Now, use the duster that fits your hand. Hand dusters is what they're called, and they have to fit the operator's hand. There are some folks, their hands are too small to properly manipulate the Getz-style duster, so the puffer duster works a lot better for them. There's a small duster called a POVI duster, and it has a little bulb on the back of it, and the design forces you to use it off the headspace. You can't flip it upside down. And like the little duster from Aerofog, the POVI is a very good piece of precision equipment. Now, the duster from Aerofog has wands and such available with it, so you can reach a little better. And of all the dusters out there that are hand dusters, it allows you to get places that are more difficult to reach better than any of the other ones. Now, let's step forward just a little bit to something bigger and more powerful. As I said, we have pressure dusters. They're not as well regulated as I'd like to see for fine dusting. Some companies like to use them, but they may be putting out too much product. It takes a lot of practice to use one of those properly for the crack and crevice precision application that's best to get control of the insects. If you're working with bed bugs or something like that, let's say you're using Cemexa, you do not want to put out too much Cemexa because too much of that product is uncontrollable and it gets everywhere. You want to do precise applications. So I really prefer a duster made by Technicide. It's called the Exacticide. I know somebody's going to say it's too expensive to buy that piece of equipment. It's not cheap, but it's a money-making piece of gear that works. And I always refer to it kind of like I would refer to something arming someone, a soldier or someone involved in some type of conflict. The hand dusters are your handguns. The reason for a handgun is to buy you time to get to the rifle or the shotgun. That's the heavy-duty handheld weapon, and in this case, that would be the Exacticide. Now, I've been using pieces of dusting equipment from that company for a couple of decades. They're produced in California, and I like what they do because they allow me so much control. The original versions were expensive. You plug them in. They were made of stainless steel and aluminum. The newer versions are pretty much synthetic materials, plastics. They're lighter, they're battery powered, and they produce a dust column that you can control like nothing else. You can put the wand into the crack or crevice for a wall void, and you will get a distribution of product through that entire void because the unit is giving you direct air flow. That constant push of air that you can vary, along with varying the amount of product you put in, will push the material through the entire void and coat everything. Now, that light coating is such that the insects won't even know that it's there. And therefore, they're going to contact the material, and you're going to get the control that you want. The other advantage to doing it this way is you're putting the material in an area that it's not going to be disturbed. It's not going to be washed away. So dust in a wall void will last a long time, particularly products like Cemexa, which will not flush the insect. It's a mechanical kill. Or products like Nibor D, which a lot of people have called the Swiss Army knife of pest control products because it gives you such broad-based control. Now, understand the difference here. Cemexa is the physical contact with the insect that causes damage, whereas the borate material in Nibor D, the insect ingests that, and then it's unable to create energy. There's some processes that go on inside, but we get control. There's a lot of science behind it, but we're talking about the dusting here. Now, as I said earlier, sometimes people look at that Exacticide and go, wow, that's really expensive. I can't afford that. Or my technicians can't have that because they'll break it. In cases like that, why do you have those technicians in the first place if they can't take care of your equipment? Precision, well-made equipment is not cheap. And it doesn't mean just dusters. Heck, pest control companies now are equipping their people with iPhones. Those are really expensive, and they're more expensive than that Tecticide duster is. And one trip to the floor will pretty much destroy one of those pieces of equipment where chances are the Exacticide will bounce, particularly the new ones. They're made with a much stronger plastic material. But the bottom line here for all of this, you need to apply dust. You need to apply it in a fine manner and distribute it properly to get contact with the target. If you can't control the distribution of the dust material you're putting out, you're going to fail. And unfortunately, your competition is going to come right along behind you, probably with the right dusting equipment in hand, and take that account away from you. I get calls every day. I've lost this account because of this pest or another, and come to find out that the dust application component of the process was suffering dramatically. So buy the right equipment, buy the equipment that you can control properly, make sure it fits you. You need to have a good manual hand duster. You need to have a heavier duty piece of equipment to put out more material. You need to have a dusting tool that's precise. And so with that, this is Jeff McGovern, the Pest Coach. And by the way, if there's any type of equipment or technology you'd like me to talk about, let me know. And we can get that on the podcast the next time. Take care, have a good day, and enjoy yourself in the world of pest control.
Hey guys, we hope you've enjoyed the Pest Geek podcast. If you had, hey, do us a favor and drop us a line. We have a phone number on our website, pestgeekpodcast.com. Go on there and get the phone and make a call and leave us a voicemail. We'd love to hear from you. We love to publish on the air what you think about the podcast. Good, bad, or ugly, it doesn't matter. We want to really hear from you. So go ahead and give us a call and use the phone number. Hey, until tomorrow, have a great one.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.